good. All right, let's get to it. There we go. All right. Welcome, 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 everyone, one and all. Hello, 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 hello. Hold on, we're getting some feedback here. There we go. Good. Welcome, everybody, to 90 and Out, Building for the Kingdom, one brick at a time, where I build with building bricks, like the Lego sets behind me, and hopefully we shouldn't have too much lag this time. Well, and while doing that, I discuss different theological things, all right? Biblical studies and what have you. The plan for this stream is going to be about an hour long, a little shorter than typical due to some other scheduling issues. And if you saw the title, we're going to be talking about who wrote the book of Isaiah while building with some Lego bricks. So, some housekeeping stuff. If you like this content, do the social media thing, hit that thumbs up. You can also check out the links in the description if you want to help support the channel. If you're on Rumble, you can tip us with the tip jar. You can also click on the link for Sticker Mule for different things of that nature. So, with that, let's get to it and get right into the building. Last time, yes, you can see it in camera. Last time, I built the helicarrier from the Adventure series with Marvel. There's a little bit of an issue with it, but overall not a bad build. It does look really nice, and it's found a home right there. If you're wondering what I did with the One Skull Ranch build, I put it right here. So moving some things around. As always, if there's a build you'd like me to work on, let me know, and we should be moving forward with things like that. Today is the 20th. So if you would like to also help support the channel, you can go to Bricklink, their designer series 10, and search for 90 and Out. You'll see two different builds that are submissions. One is the family fun at the cabin on the lake, and the other one is the mini restaurant row. Those are designed by me and submitted for production. So you can vote on those, like it or love it. Or if you don't like it, just hit not for me. All right. That would help. Very easy, very simple, and probably be building some mocks or my own creations on this channel over in the near future. The other thing is we are also on Rebrickable now, setting up submissions for different instructions and builds. So let's get right to the build today. We're going to be building this set right here. It is set 60447, the off-road mountain truck by Lego City. Looks like a fun build, so let's crack it open and get right to it. Now you might be looking at the title going, well, that was in there pretty tight. Couple of loose pieces. Set those off to the side. Got a small sticker sheet. That's nice. I like that. Nice big stickers. If you watched the last stream with the helicarrier, there's just a bunch of little, thin, tiny stickers, and they're a pain in the butt. I like these nice, big, thick ones. Much easier to apply and get right. So you may have looked at the title and went, who wrote the book of Isaiah, and just assumed, well, Isaiah, right? And yes, I am taking seminary classes at Spirit and Life Seminary. You can check out the link in the description with that. And we're covering the major prophets this week: Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Lamentations specifically. Lamentations is anonymous. It's an anonymous book. Most often it is credited to Jeremiah due to style and writing techniques. But it is an anonymous book otherwise. There are a couple other viable options as well, such as Baruch, which is Jeremiah's assistant, as well as the chronicler who wrote most of Chronicles. So bear that in mind when reading these texts. Due to the nature of how old they are, we may not know the authors. Which brings us to Isaiah. Isaiah is one of the longer books in the Christian Bible, in the Jewish Tanakh. It has 66 chapters, spanning a long period of time, a couple of hundred years. So if you assumed it was written by more than one person, I could understand that assumption. Mainly because of the amount of text involved, right? Pretty cool mini build. We got, we're going to call him Adventure Jack here, with his map and camera. So that's pretty neat. Set him off to the side. So with Isaiah, unlike Lamentations, where there are multiple people credited with writing that book, in the Jewish Talmud, as well as pretty much all of antiquity, we have one author credited. One, only one. It's, any guesses? Anybody? Any guesses? Hello, Dorothy. Glad you commented. Thank you for commenting and supporting the channel. Always good to see Dorothy in the chat. It's also good to see her in real life. Just pointing that out. But any guesses on who that one author for the book of Isaiah would be in the Jewish Talmud? If you guessed Isaiah, you'd be right. Yeah, the Jewish Talmud only credits Isaiah with writing the book of Isaiah. I know, amazing, right? Who would have thunk that Isaiah would be the one credited with writing the book bearing his name? But it is. Matter of fact, we have universal attestation of Isaiah writing this book up until the 19th century AD. So that's approximately 2,500 years of people saying, hey, Isaiah wrote the book of Isaiah. And you might be saying, hey, if we have that much credit and that much, that many people spanning nationalities, spanning, 2,500 years, spanning different languages, different continents, that sounds like a pretty good case to be made that, in fact, Isaiah wrote this book. And I would agree with you. I'm just going to put my cards on the table right now. I would agree with you. I think that evidence is pretty massive and compelling. That there would be, in fact, a lot of credit. However, there's a guy named Durham Dumm. He is a German Lutheran theologian in the 19th century. He postulated that it was not, in fact, Isaiah who wrote the book bearing his name, but could have been a scribe, an unknown scribe, unnamed scribe. It could have been the chronicler who wrote most of Chronicles. It could have been Matter of fact, he had 3 different theories or groups of people that could have wrote Isaiah. He basically broke Isaiah down into 3 sections, 3 large sections, and claimed that Isaiah didn't write. Oh, forgot that piece. Didn't write the book bearing his name because there was no way he could predict the future. Yep, you heard it here, folks. Mr. Dumb postulated the argument, the position that Isaiah could not predict the future because human beings cannot predict the future. And because human beings can't predict the future, there is no way Isaiah could have predicted the future because he was a human being. And since he couldn't predict the future, there's no way he could have wrote predictions about the future. And since we have predictions in the book of Isaiah, they had to have been written after Isaiah's life. Now, if that sounds like a bunch of word salad garbage, I would be inclined to agree with you that that's a bunch of word salad garbage. We have 2 extra pieces in that bag right there. Black 1x1 and a clear 1x1. That's pretty nice. Yeah, if you think it's kind of a word salad there that I just said, I would be inclined to agree with you on who wrote the book of Isaiah. For better part of 2,500 years, universally accepted, universally taught, universally credited with Isaiah writing the book that, bears his name. And then comes along a theologian, a Lutheran German theologian, with the name Dumb. Yep. I don't know if the irony is strong here or not, but I find it rather fascinating that the guy's last name is Dumb, and he is postulating what I consider a pretty dumb argument. Yeah, Dumb has a dumb argument. And by that I mean, his argument is that every single person in the past, almost 2,500 years got it wrong. They all got it wrong. So Ezra, Nehemiah, Jesus of Nazareth, the Maccabees, Josephus, all of the scholars and theologians in the Jewish Talmud, the medieval scholastics, the Presbyterian divines, they all get it wrong. Every single one of them that credits Isaiah with writing the book of Isaiah got it wrong. And his argument for that is because there is no way Isaiah could have been that accurate in his predictions of what was going to happen in the future. Because if you're not familiar with the book of Isaiah, Isaiah is separated into 3 general sections. That's true. He got that right. There are 3 overarching sections. There's the first section, which is about half of the book, and it covers the lifespan of Isaiah and the late kings period in Judea and Israel. That's true. And then there's the second overarching section, which is about chapter 43, 44 to about chapters 55, 56. All right. And that is talking pretty extensively about the diaspora period or the exile period, where Babylon comes and Persia comes and wipes out the Israel nation and the nation of Judah. And the nation of Judah takes captivities and that whole period, okay? So far, we're good, right? And then the last overarching section is about chapters 55, 54 to the end of the book, which is chapter 66. And that is the return of the Israelites, the return of the Jews to their homeland. which we see under Persian rule. Okay. So far, right? Now, I mean, okay. So it's a lot of this pretty accurately, and by pretty accurately, I mean like extremely accurately, these predictions and this vision that he's writing, right? And if you come at this from the worldview of the cosmos, that miracles cannot occur, that God does not exist, and that that human beings are mere mortals, naturalistic view, overarching naturalistic view, then I can see the argument to be made, right? However, is that really what the evidence shows? Is that really what the evidence shows? Does the evidence yield to Dom's argument? I'm going to say no. Because as already mentioned, cards on the table, first of all, I don't hold to the view that just because miracles and supernatural events are unlikely, they cannot happen. Okay? I hold to the view that if there is a creation, then there is a creator, and the creator is all powerful and can do whatever he wants, and is not subject to the whims or expectations of mere human beings. In short, I do not have a naturalistic view. I have a theological view. I believe in an all-powerful deity known as God. And as such, God can do whatever God wants. So if God wants to take a guy named Isaiah and in a vision take him to times and places and events that he has not lived, then guess what? He can do that. Okay? That is not impossible. May be improbable, but it is not impossible. Okay? Conan Doyle wrote in a short story, he's been credited many times of saying this, when you eliminate the impossible, no matter whatever is left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. And we have that here, okay? Right? Isaiah as a book has been treated as a singular scroll, a singular parchment, a singular composition for almost 2,500 years. It's been treated as a singular text. It wasn't until the Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, that Isaiah had chapters. It wasn't until the late Middle Ages that it had verse breakdowns. Prior to that, it was one continuous scroll, one really long scroll. So, if prior to that, it was one continuous long scroll, and when you read it as one continuous story, one continuous book, it has flow. It's not choppy. There's no like breakdown, right? In the narrative flow of this book, it has that continuity, internal continuity. It makes it very difficult for me to believe that multiple people wrote this at different points in time over several hundred years. Okay, it has more of that concept, that construct, flow, composition flow of one person sat down and wrote this, and it may or may not have been edited, but the main composition was definitely the creation of one author. Okay. I don't think that should be too difficult to understand nor accept. For example, Harry Potter. The Harry Potter series is 7 books, right? There are 7 books in the main Harry Potter series. 7 of them. Every single copy of any of those 7 books I've ever seen credits J.K. Rowling with their creation, their authorship. She is credited as the author. She is the only individual credited as the author of the Harry Potter series. Now, I'm sure there's an editor, there's a publicist, there's an editing company, right? But she is credited as the sole author of those 7 books. I think it would be absolute nonsense and an extremely difficult proposition for anyone to argue that J.K. Rowling did not, in fact, write those 7 books, since she is the only individual credited with writing those 7 books. Let's go back a little bit farther in time. Let's go to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. There is only one author credited with The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and that is Mark Twain. He's also known as Samuel Clemens because he used a pen name, right? He used a pen name. But Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain are the exact same person. So, one would have an extremely difficult time arguing that someone other than Mark Twain wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Let's go back a little bit farther. Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Othello. They are all credited to the sole authorship of William Shakespeare. Yep, William Shakespeare. Those are Shakespearean plays. They are credited exclusively to William Shakespeare. Sounds pretty simple, right? Now, some people will say that I'm oversimplifying this, but often the simplest answer is the most accurate, the correct answer, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? I have not seen any arguments whatsoever that I can recall claiming William Shakespeare, did not write the plays that I just listed. Macbeth, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, right? Why is that? Well, it's quite simple. It's because every copy of those that we have claims he wrote it. Not only that, but all of his contemporaries claimed he wrote it. He wrote them. Now, let's look at Isaiah. For almost 2,500 years, every single person claimed Isaiah wrote the book of Isaiah. Christian, Jew, non-Christian, non-Jew, alike, everyone. Until a guy named Dumb came along and said, hey, people can't foretell the future. They can't do that, so there's no way Isaiah could do it, so he couldn't have wrote it. It's kind of a dumb argument. So we have external attestation. We have internal consistency and flow. So what arguments are there that Isaiah didn't write the book of Isaiah? Well, the main one is he gets way too many things right about things that happen after he dies. Yep, he's too accurate. That's what it comes down to. People like Dumb propose that because he is so accurate on the events that take place after his death, there's no way he could have wrote about those events. Just let that sink in. It's not that he's writing about events in the future. It's that he is way too accurate in writing the events about the future. He even gets King Cyrus's name correct a few hundred years before King Cyrus is even born. He gets his name correct. So the argument is that he could not have written, wrong way. He could not have written about King Cyrus hundreds of years before King Cyrus was born, because humans can't do that. So since humans can't do that, there's no way he could do that. That's putting the cart before the horse, isn't it? Right? I mean, that is making an assumption that the evidence does not bear witness to. But what does the evidence bear witness to? Well, we have universal attestation that Isaiah wrote the book bearing his name. That's pretty impressive. So if everybody for almost 2,500 years claimed J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, these 7 Harry Potter books, and then somebody came along and said, hey, she didn't write those books, and gave some explanation because, hey, she couldn't have wrote those books because they contain stuff that she couldn't have written about. She couldn't have written about those things, so there's no way she wrote about those things. I'm pretty sure most people would laugh at that person. Just straight up laugh at them. I know I would, because I'd be like, that's a pretty dumb argument. Like, what's the common new atheist saying? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, I think it's a pretty extraordinary claim to claim somebody didn't write a book that for almost 2,500 years everybody claimed that person wrote. That's going to require some pretty extraordinary evidence now, isn't it? Internal flow. Internal flow cannot be understated. For the better part of that time, this text, Isaiah, was one scroll, one continuous scroll. It was read as a continuous scroll. It was studied as a continuous scroll. It was copied as a continuous scroll. It was presented as a continuous scroll, a continuous parchment, a continuous book. Matter of fact, we see this throughout the New Testament, specifically in the Greco-Roman biographies of Jesus of Nazareth, in reference to the scroll of Isaiah. We also see this in the Jewish Talmud consistently. We have 5 extra pieces here on that bag. The Jewish Talmud, as well as other historians. So, what do you think? Do you think it's kind of ironic that a guy with a last name of Dumb is presenting kind of a dumb argument? Because his argument essentially boils down to, he writes about things there's no way he could have possibly known about, so therefore he couldn't have wrote it. And that's pretty much his entire argument. I know. You might be like, but he was a Lutheran scholar. Yes, he was a naturalistic Lutheran scholar. That shouldn't surprise anybody. All right? He believed in pure naturalism. So if he could not explain it through natural terms, meaning the supernatural does not exist, then since he believed the supernatural does not exist and cannot exist, then anything that appears to be supernatural could not have occurred. That sounds like a bunch of hogwash, then yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you. By the way, these are the same arguments that we get for, essentially the same arguments that we see people postulating there we go. Postulating for why Moses couldn't have wrote the Torah. Why other authors couldn't have wrote the books that are assigned to them, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Things like that. They're pretty dumb arguments on their face. But let me know your thoughts. You can put it in the comments. You can let me know what you think. What are your thoughts on these ancient texts? Should we evaluate these ancient texts with the exact same evaluation methods of any other text, or should we treat them wholly different? I'm going to go out on a limb and say we should probably treat them the same as we do any other text, whether it's Josephus, Tacitus, Julius Caesar's Annals, Odyssey, Iliad. I mean, pick your flavor, right? Okay. Almost skipped a step there in our build. That would not have been good. No bueno there. There we go. Interesting. So let me know your thoughts on Isaiah. Who do you think wrote it? Do you think it was, the obvious choice, Isaiah? Or do you think it might have been someone else? And yes, I am genuinely curious. So, biblical literacy. Let's head over to talk a little bit about biblical literacy for a moment. Biblical literacy can be defined quite simply as the ability to read biblical texts and understand them for what they claim they are. Okay? So, for example, if you pick up Paul's letter to Philemon, you should be able to recognize that you are reading a personal letter from Paul to Philemon. I know. Simple, right? That's all biblical literacy is. Shakespearean literacy is, in like fashion, the ability to pick up a play, a Shakespearean play, or a Shakespearean sonnet, which is one of his many poems that he wrote, and recognize that you are writing a letter from Shakespeare, or a poem from Shakespeare, or that kind of thing, right? This is Shakespearean, meaning written by Shakespeare, right? And be able to understand it as such. We have literacy just simply means being able to read a text and understand what you're reading. And biblical literacy just has to do with biblical texts. Now, first thing I don't know about you, but one of the first things I do anytime I pick up a book or news article or whatever it is identify what I am reading, the what. All right. So if I'm reading a nutrition guide disclosure on a cereal box, the first thing I'm going to do and instinctively is recognize that I am reading a nutrition guide on a cereal box. Clearly, I'm going to read that a little differently than, say, Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss, right? When it comes to Isaiah, one of the things that we need to remember and be able to recognize is what we are reading. We are not reading a fantasy novel, a high fantasy novel. So that's with like orcs and elves, and right. We're not reading a fantasy novel, right? We're also not reading a historical narrative, an ancient Near East historical narrative. Isaiah is neither of those, right? Isaiah is writing a vision known as a prophetic type of writing. It's an ancient Near East Iron Age style of writing. It's not exclusive, by the way, to the Tanakh or the Christian Old Testament. That's cool. The hood opens. That is pretty cool. I like that. Yeah. And it looks like there's a 8-cylinder in there. That's pretty cool. So this is proving to be a pretty simple build, but fun to build. As I was saying with Isaiah, he is writing a ancient Near East prophetic book based on a vision that he had. So we need to read it in that context. It is not, I want to be clear, okay, it is not an ancient Near East historical narrative. Right? It is not an ancient Near East fantasy or work of fiction. It's not that either. It is specific. It specifically falls into the broad category of ancient Near East prophetic writing, and that's how we should read it. I think people like Burham Dum. Yes, that is his actual name. Duhm. Dum. The German Lutheran theologian from the 19th century, fails, and personally catastrophically fails, in being able to do that with his assessment. He is clearly coming from the approach that this is ancient Near East historical narrative, and that's not what it is. It doesn't claim to be. As a matter of fact, if we pause for a moment, I'll grab that one. I'm going to read from the New King James, okay? English translation. We'll flip it over to Isaiah real quick. All right. And we'll just go right to the opening, because Isaiah tells the reader right at the very beginning what he is writing. And who better to know what he is writing than, well, the writer. The vision of Isaiah the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uriah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. That is the very first verse, very first sentence of the book of Isaiah. So he tells the reader right from the get-go what he is writing. He's not writing an ancient Near East historical narrative. He's not writing a work of fiction. He's not writing a fantasy. He's not writing a romance or a comedy. He is writing an ancient Near East prophetic book. That's where that the vision refers to. It's a vision, it's a dream-like state that Isaiah claims to have experienced, and he is writing down what was in that vision. And the entire rest of the book is that, right? So we need to read it in that, with that lens, that recognition. By the way, if you want to know how long Isaiah is, there you go, right there. All right, Isaiah, 66 chapters. That's how much space it takes up in this particular printing. That's Isaiah 1. This is Isaiah 66, 24. And Mark references, when Mark's Greco-Roman biography of Jesus of Nazareth references the ending of Isaiah, which is this: "And they shall go forth and look upon the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me, for their worm does not die, and their fire is not quenched. They shall be an abhorrence to all flesh." Okay? If we turn over to Mark 9, keep in mind there's about 600 years separating these two writings. Okay? They're also written in very different styles. Ancient Isaiah is ancient Near East prophecy, and Mark is Greco-Roman biography. Very, very different texts. All right. We have chapter 9. Okay. Starting in the 44th verse, we're actually going to go to the 43rd verse here. Mark quoting Jesus of Nazareth: "If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life maimed rather than having two hands, to go to hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched." And here's the quote: "Where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched." Back to Jesus of Nazareth: "And if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame rather than having 2 feet, to be cast into hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched." And then he quotes Isaiah again. He actually quotes Isaiah 3 times here. And each time Jesus of Nazareth is talking about if a part of your body causes you to sin, it would be better for you not to have that part. And it's a theological discourse going on here, specifically responding to John asking Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone who does not follow us casting out demons in your name, and we forbid him because he does not follow us." And this is Jesus's response to that prompt. Okay. Basically, it's he's using a physical body to represent his church or his disciples, and how that works. So you can read into that if you want. But notice the difference here, right? Isaiah is being credited for writing Isaiah. I know. Bizarre, right? Who would have thunk? In the same way as Shakespeare gets credited for writing, Shakespeare. So the first thing when it comes to biblical literacy is just being able to recognize what you're reading. And as I stated, already stated, Burham Dumm seems to forget that in his argumentation, in his presenting. And by the way, a lot of scholars have caught on to Dumm's argument and have used it, and it's actually quite popular among scholars today. I believe people like Bart Ehrman hold to that theory as well, that Isaiah could not have written the later 2 sections of Isaiah because they talk explicitly about things that he didn't live through, that happened a couple of hundred years later. And well, that's just simply not what we read. The text itself doesn't read that. And then the external attestation doesn't read that. We have 5 more small pieces, by the way, out of bag 3. Let's get bag 4 opened up. And I know some people would say, well, you're steel manning the argument here. You're overselling the case. And I don't think so, because of the sheer volume here. We're not talking 1 or 2 people claiming. So if we're looking at Shakespeare and Hamlet, for example, we're not talking about 1 or 2 people claiming Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. We're talking about everyone claimed Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, right? We're not talking about 1 or 2 people claiming Isaiah wrote Isaiah, as in the entirety of Isaiah. We're talking everyone. Where'd it go? There it is. We're talking everyone for almost 2,500 years claimed Isaiah wrote the entirety of Isaiah. That's the cumulative case to be made here. It's not. I know I probably seem like I'm harping on this, but I don't think it can be understated the sheer volume of people claiming that Isaiah wrote Isaiah. All right. The Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm not sure which P it is, which manuscript it is. I could probably look it up, but there is almost a near complete copy of Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls that predates our previously known oldest by over 1,000 years, I think it is. I think it's close to 1,000 years. All right. And it is nearly identical. There are some typographical errors, differences, and there's a couple of other like spelling word differences. But in general, it is nearly identical to the previous oldest copy of Isaiah we had. And guess who's credited with writing the entire thing? Just take a guess. You wouldn't believe it. Yeah, it's Isaiah. Oh, that just sits in there. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. The sleeping bag just sits inside. I'm not a big fan of loose pieces in most buildings. That's I have a feeling that this, however, is going to get a roof on it at some point in time, so that might just be a loose set. But it is a pretty neat sleeping bag. In the cabin family fun at the cabin on lake set that I designed, I use 2 sleeping bags. I think I use 2 sleeping bag pieces in that set. So we also have a shovel that's just kind of shoved in there too. Okay, well that's good to know. And that's why I find Dumb's argument to be, well, dumb, because it seems to ignore the universal attestation throughout the previous almost 2,500 years. Not only does it seem to ignore that, but it also seems to ignore the internal flow and composition. There are very minor changes in syntax from beginning to end. It reads as though one person wrote this in its entirety. Also, Isaiah is one of the most quoted of the Old Testament books in other writings. Okay, so the Torah is the most quoted, specifically Deuteronomy. And then we have the Psalms, which there are 150 of those. And then it's Isaiah. Okay, yeah, then it's Isaiah, right? That is a lot of quotation and referencing going on. The sheer volume of which I think cannot be understated. How much Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, is referenced, directly quoted in the Jewish Talmud, in the Christian New Testament, in writings like Josephus, and throughout history, right? And all of it cite Isaiah as the author. Now, some of you who are watching might be thinking, why is this such a big deal? Why am I harping on who wrote this book? Who cares? Right? Well, it's very simple. It is. It's quite simple why I'm harping on this. Because if we allow someone like Dumb to present a rather dumb argument and we give that credibility, we give that credence, right? We give that credibility and we give that credence, then how easy is it going to be for someone to come along and convince us that other things that we have very good, strong evidence to believe and support, are we going to reject those teachings as well? Some would say this is a slippery slope fallacy, and I would say in this case it's not a fallacy because we have so overwhelming evidence of the authorship of Isaiah that it is not a fallacy to say, hey, Isaiah wrote this book, period. Okay. Right? We have so the sheer volume is mind-boggling. Oh, these are just kind of stuck in here. Oh, okay. We got more loose pieces. Well, I don't know where that one went, but I do know we have a second one of them, and it's a compass. So we'll throw that in there. We'll throw the wrench in there. And we're supposed to throw the binoculars in there too, and then stick a lid on it. Okay. There we go. We got a lid on it. Boom. And we're going to have a second crate. The second crate is going to get a flashlight. Oh, hold on. Nope, I did that wrong. It's going to get a flashlight, a water bottle, and a banana, and a lid on it. There you go. I don't mind these as loose pieces because they're not really, yeah, they're loose, but they're contained. And then we're going to stick our wheels on it. There goes the shovel. Goes in the back there. There we go. What else we got? That's it. That's the build. So we have 4 more extra pieces. We got quite a few extra pieces this time. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 extra little tiny pieces there. Cool explorer dude. We'll call him Adventure Jack with his camera and his map And the Jeep is pretty neat. I do like it. That is a pretty cool build. I think I can take some inspiration off of this in some upcoming mocks I'm working on. I definitely like the hood feature. That's pretty cool. I definitely like the hood. I like that. Let's go ahead and put camera. Don't need to be using the camera while driving. Right? No camera while driving there. Adventure Jack. Excuse me. We are not that adventurous. There we go. Woo! That is a pretty cool build. I like that build. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like the old Broncos from like the 90s or the 80s, probably 80s Broncos. So that's pretty neat. I do like it. I like the there we go. We got the winch. The winch is kind of a little lackluster though. Got a little tighten that. That's all right. We'll fix that here. All right, so we're gonna start coming to a close here in the live stream. This was a very nice build, about 200 plus pieces, I think. And as I was saying about Isaiah and authorship, if we start conceding doubt on something that has so much evidence supporting it as Isaiah writing Isaiah, then who's to stop us from throwing out everything else from antiquity? Okay, that's how much support there is for Isaiah being the author of the book bearing his name. Is that if we're going to throw that out, if we're going to say Isaiah didn't write this because there's no way he could have wrote what he is credited with writing, then and completely ignore the absolute mountain of evidence supporting his authorship, then why believe anything? Why believe any of it? Like, why believe any of the prophecies? Why believe any of the historical narratives? Why believe Shakespeare wrote Hamlet? Why believe J.K. Rowling wrote The Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or The Goblet of Fire, right? Why should we believe anyone wrote anything? Why should you believe that I'm in fact in this video talking about Isaiah writing Isaiah if you aren't willing to accept the sheer volume of evidence supporting Isaiah writing Isaiah? That's how confident I am in that. Like, we can discuss the theological implications of that, but if something as obvious and so well cited as who wrote the book in its entirety is going to be rejected, then we have no common ground to stand on to discuss anything. And I know that might be hard for some people to say, but in order to debate any given subject, there must be some common ground to start with. There has to be a defining of terms, right? This is where we're starting from. And if we're going to reject something as obvious, so obvious, as Isaiah writing the book of Isaiah, then there is no common ground to work off of. If we're going to claim that he didn't write the book bearing his name because somebody 2,500 years after his death said, hey, he didn't write it. That's a pretty dumb argument. Yeah, pun intended. Burham dumb. Pun fully intended. That's a very lackluster argument. So, thank you for watching. This is Timothy Holt. I'm Pastor Timothy Holt with 90 and Out, where we discuss biblical literacy and biblical text while building cool models out of building blocks, usually Lego. Not always, but usually Lego. This one, we built this really cool off-road mountain adventure Jeep thing. What's the name of it? Off-road mountain truck. Off-road mountain truck. It's actually a pretty fun build. I like it. It's a pretty straightforward build, but it's a pretty cool build. I do really like it. Definitely reminds me of like the 80s or 90s Broncos. Or, you know what? Actually, it kind of looks similar to the Jurassic Park Jeeps. Like the original movie. The OG Jurassic Park Jeeps for inside the park. It does kind of look like that, doesn't it? Yeah. That's cool. My favorite feature is definitely the working hood popping up and seeing the engine inside. That is definitely my favorite feature of this, but overall pretty cool. I like the ladders on the side so you can get up. In the top, we've got water bottles and flashlights and banana, so there's food, there's a map, there's a sleeping bag. It's a really cool build, great use of pieces. Probably going to use something similar to this in some upcoming builds. So, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you like this content or there's a particular subject you want me to discuss on a future Building for the Kingdom one brick at a time, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, till next time, don't take my word for anything Scripture has to say. Pick it up, read it for yourself. The best Bible is the one that gets read, so by all means read it, and see you next time.